I used to believe that hard work was enough, that if you poured your soul into something, people would see it, respect it, maybe even reward it. But that's not how my story went. My name's Claire Donovan. And for 8 years, I built my life inside the glass walls of Wechsler Dynamics, a sleek Chicago tech firm that looked perfect on the outside, but behind the boardroom doors, it was something else entirely. When I first walked in, fresh out of grad school, I was all hope and fire. I wore ambition like armor. I didn't know then that the same people who smiled at me in the elevator would one day sharpen their knives behind my back. My boss, Elliot Wechsler, was the kind of man who could charm a room and destroy a life in the same breath. People called him a visionary. I called him a volcano, all energy and heat and dangerous when crossed. Still, I believed in the company, believed in him even. Until the day I found the email. It was a late night in December, snow falling outside. The office was quiet, just the hum of the heater and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I was finalizing the numbers for our upcoming investor pitch when an alert popped on my screen. An internal message, forwarded by mistake. Subject line, Project Vertex, new lead. The thread was short, but my name wasn't on it. Instead, I saw the name of a man who had joined 3 weeks earlier. Travis Cole. Fresh, cocky, and the kind who thought office politics was a sport. The message read, "Let's position Travis as the face of the project. Claire's good, but we need someone more dynamic. The board responds better to men who own the room." I remember staring at those words until they blurred. The board responds better to men. My stomach twisted. I had led Project Vertex from day one. Every design, every strategy, every sleepless night, mine. I walked to the window. The city lights shimmered below like they didn't care. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not in anger, not yet. It was quieter, like the first hairline fracture in glass. Over the next few weeks, I watched as Travis began to shadow me. He'd sit in on meetings, take notes, smile too much. People called it mentorship. I called it theft in slow motion. By January, he was presenting my work to clients, word for word. I kept waiting for Elliot to correct him, to set the record straight. He never did. One night, after a client dinner, I confronted Elliot in the parking garage. "Why is Travis leading Vertex?" I asked. He smiled, that slick politician smile. "Claire, don't take it personally. You're invaluable, but we need someone who looks like a leader. Investors trust a certain image." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of it burned. "You mean male?" He didn't deny it. He just patted my shoulder like a teacher scolding a child. "It's business, Claire. Don't make it emotional." That night, I drove home shaking. I barely remember the drive. Just headlights, rain, and the word emotional, echoing in my head like a curse. That was the word they always used when a woman refused to stay silent. Still, I tried to be professional. I stayed, I worked harder, I smiled when I wanted to scream because part of me thought, maybe they'd see the truth eventually, but they didn't. In February, Travis was promoted to lead strategist. My title didn't change. My pay didn't change. Only my patience did. That weekend, I sat in my apartment surrounded by folders, files, and late-night coffee cups. And I decided to start documenting everything. Emails, memos, meeting notes, anything that showed what was really happening. I didn't know why I was doing it then. I just knew I needed a record, proof. The breaking point came in March. We had a major presentation with Ridgewell Capital, a billion-dollar investor group. It was my deck, my strategy. But Travis was the one standing on stage. I stood in the back, watching him click through slides he didn't even understand. And then he said something that made my blood freeze. He called the model his innovation. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, and I swear I could feel something die inside me. When the applause ended, Elliot took the stage and said, "Let's give credit where it's due. Travis and his team did an incredible job." His team. I walked out of that conference room before the applause faded. I didn't cry, not then. I just stopped feeling. That night, I opened my laptop. I opened every file, every folder, and I started writing. Not emails, not reports, a story. A story of every stolen idea, every lie, every manipulation. I wasn't sure what it would become. A report to HR, maybe. Or a legal case. Or something darker. But I knew this. I wasn't going to let them bury me. A week later, something strange happened. Elliot called me into his office. "Claire," he said, "we're restructuring the team. It's nothing personal, but your role is being phased out." He offered me a transition package, a severance. I looked at him across the glass desk and said, "You're firing me so you can give my work to him." He didn't even blink. It's business. And there it was again. Business. When I stood up to leave, I noticed something on his desk. A printed copy of the Vertex proposal, my name still on the first page. He had crossed it out with a pen. That was the moment I decided this wasn't over. Over the next few days, I played their game. I smiled. I thanked them for the opportunity. I even helped Travis with the final handoff files. He thought I was broken. Elliot thought I'd disappear quietly. But I had other plans. I copied everything I'd ever worked on. Every email, every document, every timestamp. I encrypted it, backed it up, and kept it safe. I spent nights digging into company records, financial filings, old audit reports, and that's when I found something. A line item buried in a vendor ledger. Payments made to a consulting firm that didn't exist. The firm's name? Cole and Associates. Travis's name. He was billing the company under a fake consultancy, paying himself through a shell account, and Elliot was signing off on it. That was the night my fear turned into purpose. I knew this was bigger than me now. I didn't have power, I didn't have connections, but I had truth, and truth, in the right hands, is lethal. I began reaching out to old colleagues, quietly, one by one, the ones who'd been pushed out, discredited, silenced. Turns out I wasn't the first they tried to erase. There was Janice, the accountant who questioned a bonus discrepancy and was restructured. Leo, the analyst whose reports got lost after he noticed a missing million. They all had stories. I gathered them. And as I listened, I realized revenge isn't always fire. Sometimes it's ice, quiet, patient, waiting. By May, I had enough evidence to light Wexler Dynamics on fire without striking a match. But I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet. Because real revenge isn't about rage. It's about timing. And I wanted them to feel it. To watch everything they'd built on lies collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. I wanted them to know exactly who brought it down. But that would come later. I was standing alone on a Chicago rooftop at midnight, the wind whipping through my hair, watching the city below, cold, beautiful, indifferent. My voice softens. They thought they buried me, but they forgot one thing. I wasn't soil. I was a seed. I didn't sleep for days after that night. The city outside my window looked different, colder, sharper, like it was made of glass. Every light reminded me of the office I used to sit in, the meetings I used to lead, the people who used my work like a ladder and kicked me off halfway up. But I wasn't falling anymore. I was climbing again, quietly, in the dark, where they couldn't see me. I started by building a timeline. Every fake payment, every shell invoice, every consulting fee that smelled like corruption. I was methodical, like they'd trained me to be. Funny how the same discipline they'd used to control me was now my weapon. I still had access to certain drives, thanks to the handoff period they'd so generously allowed. I combed through archived emails, cross-checked vendor lists, and traced every suspicious transaction, and what I found made my hands shake. The money wasn't just going to Travis, it was being funneled into offshore accounts, Cayman Islands, Belize, Malta, under the names of fake vendors. And the authorization trail always ended with one signature. Elliot Wexler, the man who told me not to make it emotional. The man who built his empire on stolen labor and dirty money. I sat there, staring at his signature, and felt something strange. Not anger. Clarity. He wasn't a monster. Monsters at least know what they are. Elliot was worse. He thought he was good. The kind who smiles at charity galas while cutting his employees' throats behind the curtain. By the end of the week, I had enough to ruin him. But I didn't want to ruin him fast. I wanted him to watch it crumble, piece by piece. Revenge, I decided, would be slow, precise, surgical. It began with whispers. I reached out to a journalist I'd met years ago, Lena Morris from the Chicago Ledger. She'd once covered a tech corruption scandal that sent a CEO to prison. Sharp, fearless, and tired of half-truths. I sent her an anonymous message first. Wexler Dynamics, internal fraud, multiple shell accounts. Start with Cole and Associates, she replied within an hour. Who is this? Someone who knows where the bodies are buried. I didn't sign my name. Not yet. We met 3 days later at a quiet cafe on the north side, where no one from the business district would ever go. I wore a scarf, sunglasses. Cliché maybe, but I didn't care. She was direct. Why should I trust you? I slid a USB drive across the table. Because I can prove it. Her eyes narrowed. If this is real, it's huge. But if it's fake, I lose my job. It's real, I said. And this isn't everything. It's just the beginning. She hesitated, then pocketed the drive. Then let's see how deep it goes. For the first time in months, I smiled. The fuse was lit. Meanwhile, at Wexler Dynamics, things were still running smoothly. At least on the surface. Travis strutted around like a king. Elliot bragged in interviews about the company's innovation culture. I watched it all online, sipping coffee, anonymous. But the truth was already leaking. A week after my meeting with Lena, a small post appeared on a business forum. Rumors say Wexler Dynamics under federal review, unconfirmed. People ignored it at first, but rumors spread like wildfire when they smell like truth. 2 days later, an article appeared on the Ledger. Whistleblower alleges financial misconduct at major tech firm. It didn't name names. Not yet. But the description was unmistakable. I could imagine Elliot's reaction. The smirk fading, the phone calls, the emergency meetings. But that was just the tremor before the quake. Lena needed more proof, and I had it. There was one thing left that could burn them completely. The Vertex files. The real versions. The ones with my digital fingerprints. Timestamps, authorship, the metadata that proved I created everything Travis claimed as his own. I still had copies, but they were encrypted and locked in an external drive I'd hidden after I left the office, inside a hollow book in my apartment bookshelf. That night, I took it out for the first time in months. The weight of it in my hand felt like power. I decrypted the files and sent Lena the evidence, but before I did, I added something, a personal statement. They tried to erase me. But data doesn't lie. Neither do timestamps. The truth has its own memory. 3 days later, the ledger published again, this time with names. Exclusive. Whistleblower documents. Link Wexler Dynamics to financial misconduct and fraudulent vendor accounts. The article went viral overnight. The next morning, Wexler Dynamics stock dropped 23%. Investors demanded explanations. Board members panicked. Elliott denied everything, of course. He blamed a disgruntled former employee. I laughed when I read that. Disgruntled. The word they always use when a woman fights back. Travis tried to go into hiding, but social media found him. His LinkedIn lit up with comments calling him a fraud, a thief. He deleted his account within hours. And then came the audits. The SEC opened an investigation. Subpoenas were issued. The company's offices were raided. Lena texted me one night, "You did this." I typed back, "No, they did this to themselves." But I wasn't finished. Because the article didn't mention the most painful part, how they stole not just my work, but my dignity. And I wanted that truth to breathe too. So I recorded a video. Not for the press, not for fame. For the people who'd ever been silenced. It was just me, sitting in my living room, the city lights behind me. I looked straight into the camera and said, "My name is Claire Donovan. I worked for Wexler Dynamics for 8 years. I believed in them. Until they decided my gender was a liability. They took my work, my title, and gave it to someone else. They told me it wasn't personal, but it was. It always is." I paused, then added softly, "If you've ever been told to stay quiet, don't. Silence protects the powerful, not the honest." I posted it under my real name. Within 24 hours, it had 500,000 views. By the end of the week, 3 million. Hashtags trended. People shared their own stories. They tried to erase me, became a movement. And just like that, the company that tried to make me invisible became the face of corporate greed. Elliott went on television, red-faced, sweating through his suit, denying everything. But the evidence was public now. The data leaks, the shell companies, the invoices, the internet doesn't forget. By July, Wexler Dynamics had lost half its clients. By August, the SEC froze their assets. And by September, the board voted to remove Elliott as CEO. I watched the announcement live, sitting on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, coffee in hand. The anchor's voice was calm, detached. Following months of investigation, Wexler Dynamics CEO Elliott Wexler has stepped down amid fraud allegations. Sources say federal charges may follow. I didn't smile. Not right away. I just whispered, "Finally." Then I saw Travis's name scroll across the ticker, under federal investigation for embezzlement. That was when I smiled. But the victory wasn't sweet. It was quiet. Because revenge isn't always celebration. Sometimes it's relief, the deep, aching kind. A week later, I walked by the building that used to be my second home. The glass lobby was empty, the lights off, a for lease sign hung in the window. It looked smaller somehow. I stood there for a long time, watching my reflection in the glass. 8 years of my life in that building. 8 years they thought I'd forget. I whispered, "You don't erase people like me." And for the first time, I felt peace. But peace doesn't last long in stories like mine. Because a few weeks later, I got an email. No sender, no subject, just a single line. "You think it's over?" Attached was a photo, me at the cafe with Lena. Someone had been watching. I felt the blood drain from my face. That night, I checked my apartment, locks, windows, everything. Nothing seemed wrong, but the silence felt heavier. I called Lena, told her about the email. She went quiet, then said, "We might have poked something bigger than we thought." "What do you mean?" "There's more money missing than what we published. And if the wrong people think you're the one who exposed it..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. For months I'd been the hunter. Now suddenly I wasn't sure. I looked out my window at the city, endless lights, endless stories, and wondered how many other lives were tangled in the web I'd just torn apart. Revenge, I realized, doesn't end when the guilty fall. Sometimes it keeps going, like a shadow that refuses to die. Still, I didn't regret it. Not 1 second. Because somewhere out there, another woman was being silenced, and maybe she'd see my story and think, I can fight too. That was enough for me. For now. As the weeks passed, the noise faded. The investigations continued, but I stayed out of it. Until the night Lena called me, breathless. "Claire, you need to see this," she said. "It's about the offshore accounts." "What about them?" "They weren't just Elliott's or Travis's. There's another name, a bigger one." "Who?" She hesitated, then said, "A senator." And that was when I realized my revenge story wasn't just about corporate greed anymore. It was about power. And power never lets go quietly. The night Lena called, everything changed. For months, I thought I'd taken down a corrupt company. I thought the story was finished. Good versus evil. Truth versus greed. The woman who refused to be erased finally finding justice. But justice, I was learning, isn't clean. It's messy. It's dangerous. And sometimes it bites back. After the call, I met Lena again. Same cafe, same corner table, same uneasy silence between us. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, offshore wire transfers, encrypted messages, signatures that didn't belong to Elliott or Travis. One signature stopped me cold. Senator Paul Vance. I knew the name. Everyone did. He was the golden boy of Illinois politics, a man who preached integrity on television while cutting backroom deals in the dark. Lena's voice was low. We found links between Vance's campaign fund and the same shell accounts used by Wexler Dynamics, millions, disguised as consulting fees. I stared at the papers. "You're saying the senator was laundering money through Wexler?" She nodded. "And now that the company's collapsed, people are starting to talk. Some of them don't want this story to reach daylight." I looked at the photo still haunting my phone, me at that cafe weeks ago. Someone already knows we're digging. "Then we dig faster," Lena said. She smiled, but her eyes weren't calm. They were the eyes of someone who knew she'd stepped onto thin ice. We worked in secret for days. Nights blurred into mornings. We pieced together transactions, traced encrypted emails, built a map of corruption that stretched far beyond one company. And the deeper we went, the clearer it became. Elliott wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn. The real puppeteer was Vance. He'd used Wexler Dynamics as a money funnel, campaign kickbacks disguised as innovation grants. Travis was just the front man. Elliott was the willing fool. It all made sense now. Why the company had government contracts that never delivered. Why regulators missed obvious fraud. The system hadn't failed. It had protected itself. I sat on my couch one night, documents spread across the floor like a crime scene, and whispered, it was never about me. But then I corrected myself. It started with me. And that meant I was going to finish it. 2 weeks later, Lena went missing. Her editor called me in a panic. She didn't show up for work. Her phone's off. No one's seen her. My chest tightened. What do you mean missing? Gone. Just gone. I hung up and felt the world tilt. The city outside my window looked the same, indifferent, but everything inside me was chaos. I searched everywhere. Her apartment, her favorite spots, nothing. The only thing left behind was her notebook. Sitting on my doorstep the next morning, wrapped in brown paper. No note, just that. Inside were her final pages, dates, names, a flash drive taped to the back cover. I plugged it into my laptop with shaking hands. It was a video. Lena, sitting in her office, her voice steady but urgent. If you're seeing this, it means I can't publish. The truth's bigger than I thought. They're watching everything. The calls, the emails, even my car. Claire, if you get this, don't trust anyone in power. Get this story out, no matter what it costs. The screen went black. I sat there, tears blurring my vision, heart pounding like a drum. Then something clicked inside me. A familiar voice from months ago. They thought they buried me. But I was a seed. I uploaded the entire archive. Every document, every clip, every voice recording Lena had saved. But not to the ledger. I sent it to 100 journalists, independent ones, podcasters, whistleblower networks, and finally, I uploaded the files myself. Public link, open access, impossible to erase. Within hours, it exploded. Senator Vance implicated in corporate fraud scandal. Whistleblower evidence leaked. Political corruption tied to tech giant. The Wexler files trending worldwide. Cable news picked it up. Commentators argued on air. Federal investigators reopened the case. By the end of the week, Paul Vance held a press conference, all smiles, denying everything, calling it a politically motivated attack. But denial doesn't stop the internet. Anonymous insiders came forward. A junior accountant leaked campaign spreadsheets. One by one, the dominoes fell. And then came the arrest. It happened on a Monday morning. Live coverage, flashing lights, headlines that made the whole country stop scrolling for a second. Senator Paul Vance arrested in money laundering investigation. He looked smaller on screen, fragile, human. The mighty always do when the mask breaks. I should have felt triumph, vindication, but all I felt was tired. Because revenge, when it's done, doesn't feel like fire. It feels like smoke. The aftermath, quiet, heavy, choking. I walked outside that night, the air cold against my skin, and stood by the river. The city glittered like nothing had happened, even though everything had. I whispered to the wind, "It's over." But a voice inside me asked, "Is it?" Because Lena was still gone. And some nights, I still felt eyes on me. 3 months later, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a small piece of paper with a single line. "She's safe. Don't look." No signature, no clue. But I recognized the handwriting, Lena's. Relief flooded through me, so strong it made me cry. She was alive, somewhere, and that was enough. The investigation continued. Elliot took a plea deal. Travis turned witness. Vance faced 20 years. The company dissolved. The board scattered, and I rebuilt. I started my own consultancy, small, honest, transparent. I hired people who'd been burned by the same kind of corruption I had. People who knew what it meant to start over. We called it seedline strategies. Because growth comes from what they tried to bury. We didn't chase millions. We chased integrity. And for the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. But sometimes, late at night, when the city hums and the wind rattles the windows, I still think about what it cost. Not just to me, to everyone tangled in that web. Revenge had freed me, yes. But it also changed me. Made me sharper, colder, stronger, and yet still hopeful. Because if my story taught me anything, it's this. You can destroy everything built on lies, but you don't have to become what you destroyed. You can rise without hate. You can start again. A year later, I got an invitation in the mail. An award ceremony. The Chicago Ledger was honoring whistleblowers who'd sparked systemic change. Lena was on the list. She wasn't there in person. Just a recorded message played on stage. Her voice filled the room. The truth doesn't need heroes. It just needs witnesses brave enough to speak. When the applause ended, I felt her words sink into me like light after a long winter. That night, as I left the theater, someone slipped a note into my coat pocket. "You did good, Claire. L." I looked around, but she was gone. I smiled through tears. For the first time in years, I felt like everything had come full circle. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, they made me unforgettable. But stories like mine never really end. Months later, while sorting old files, I found one I didn't recognize, buried deep in a backup folder. Its title, Project Legacy. Curious, I opened it. Inside were encrypted memos, Wexler's old communications, but newer than anything I'd saved. Dated after the company's collapse. One line jumped out at me. Assets restructured under new entity, same investors, different name. And below it, a familiar signature. Travis Cole, alive, active, rebuilding. I stared at the screen, heart sinking, then hardening. Because corruption doesn't die. It mutates. And maybe my story wasn't finished after all. Revenge gave me closure. But justice. Justice is a garden you keep tending, and I'm not done planting yet.